You're here to talk about your first album in 15 years, Survivor. I had read that you've talked about you were looking for a record label deal, and then you said, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself. Do you wish now in hindsight, now that the album's out in the world and being received, do you wish you would have done that sooner, or are you happy with the way things kind of turned out as far as from a timeline standpoint?
Well, I mean, I was signed to BMG for almost 5 years. So I assumed that it was going to happen, and I was waiting to make the record and waiting. And I finally said, it was actually during the writer's strike, the actor's strike, when nobody was working. And I said, this is the perfect time to get in there. So I started making music, and, you know, it was all coming out of my own pocket. And after we had done pretty much most of the music, went to BMG. They didn't even know that I was on their roster. And then I presented the music to them, and then the person that was in charge of me as an artist ended up getting let go. So all of a sudden, all the music that I just recorded that I had produced myself ended up not having a place. And that was when your back is against the wall. I said, you know what? I've got to go through with this and figure it out. So one of my executive producers had a deal with ADA Warner and as a distribution, and I said, okay, let's create my own label and let's finish this to the end. And that's kind of how we did it. So yes, it's exhausting, it's expensive. There's so many components that I had no idea I would have to be in control of. I've got a great team behind me that has helped producing in terms of videos and producers and just the mechanics of getting music out there. It's not like it was back in 1988 when I did The Right Stuff and I was on Wing Records for Polygram, and all that stuff was self-contained. And all that stuff was like you have a 10-year or 8-album or 10-year deal. Now it's kind of figuring, is radio valid? Do we have to make sure that it's radio ready? Or, you know, how many streams do we get? And it's a completely different language and a world, but that's what it is now.
Anything really fun about doing it the independent way?
Artistically, it's great because I can put whatever I want on the album. And I can say, oh, let's do a remix of this. And what I love is that people are loving it. They go, wow, this is kind of, there's dance, there's Latin, there's jazzy stuff, there's musical theater. I said, exactly. That's what I want it to be. It's not just one thing. I'm not just in one lane. This is who I am. This is my history. And enjoy.
Where did the title come from?
Survivor was a song that Loris Holland wrote, who's done work with everyone from Celine to Mariah, Lauryn Hill. He's amazing. And when I heard the demo, I was like, oh my God, I love the kind of Caribbean feel of it that he does so well. But I also love the theme, like Survivor. I'm 61 years old. I'm still doing what I like. I'm still out there creating new things and being in the forefront, you know, having relevance.
Of course, Trixie Mattel on there as well. How'd you link up with Trixie?
So Trixie and I did a show on Paramount Plus, Queen of the Universe, and it was a drag queen live singing contest. So yes, they were drag queens, so we had to judge them on their drag, but then also their real singing voice. So they're not lip syncing to anything, they are actually singing. So that was fantastic. And so we did that for two seasons, and we shot that in London. So that's when I met Trixie. And also I met her as a judge on RuPaul Drag Race, you know, over 10 years ago.
Right. There's another song on the album called Here's to You. Are you singing that into anyone or any group of people in particular?
Here's to You was done, again, by Kipper. Kipper sent me a text and said, give me a list of 10 people that you lost with the AIDS crisis. And I was like, uh-oh. So I gave him my list. And then he came back and he said, I just finished crying, I hope you like it. And when I read the lyrics and heard the demo, I was like, okay, this is amazing. Then I started going through the names and I go, well, my Michael. He said, well, that was my Michael. I go, well, that was Roberto. Well, that was my Roberto, because we both were in LA at the time and at the height of the AIDS crisis. Even my first wedding, there's been 3, but my first wedding, I lost 5 people at my wedding, not at the day of my wedding, but from AIDS, to AIDS. So, and that's only 5 of many people that I experienced the loss with. So that is for all the people that we lost through the AIDS crisis. And it's a joyous song to remind people that life is fleeting, to enjoy all the good times, but to also remember that you are living in our hearts always.
Were there a lot of conversations that took place as far as getting you back on the Miss America stage and then the apology at the start of the show and all of that?
Not a lot of conversations. I did have a meeting out in LA with Sam Haskell at the time, talking about bringing me in. And I said, you know, I had some big reservations, and the most important thing was my mom, who was still living at the time and lived through all the mayhem with me and my dad and my family and the community. So at first her thing was absolutely not. And then she's like, well, you know, if it makes sense, if I get an apology because of the way that they treated us and the family. So I mentioned that. I said, listen, you know, I say no. My mom says it's okay, but you know, she's got some real reservations because I'd moved on, and so when Sam actually did it on stage, I could see his hands trembling as he was about to speak, and I knew that was something was going to happen. So I was happy for my mom that she got the validation and somewhat of a closure. I mean, we're talking, you know, 30 years after the fact. So, but you know, the memories are still obviously scarred into the memory. So I'm happy that she was happy.
You're not really in touch with the organization at all anymore then, or?
I still get emails, but I'm on Instagram. I am in touch with some of the gals. Yeah.
Do you think there's still a place for Miss America in 2024?
There's always a place for scholarships, which is why I even, you know, it was my first time I'd even been involved in the Miss America pageant system. And, you know, I went to Syracuse University. Every year I'd gotten scholarships. And, you know, my parents are both teachers, but it's always great to get more money because school is expensive. So I love the opportunity to have scholarships, and I think that's important, especially with the price of education nowadays. It's outstanding. And having 4 children that have gone through the college university systems, it's a lot. I mean, both my parents had their masters, so I felt I was like, what happened to you? You didn't finish
Were they
undergrad?
bugging you about it or no?
They didn't bug me because they understood, like, to go back to finish up at the time where I was on, you know, every paper and every, you know, news feed and stuff. It was a lot. And there was no way that I was going to have the undergrad experience that I had before I became famous at 20 years old. So they understood that. But yes, my mom was very happy when I gave my speech and I got my degree.
Which one do you think she liked more, the degree or the Billboard #1?
Probably the degree. The degree. I mean, they're educators, so that means something.